I started touring with Cloakroom in March of 2024. I was living in Berlin at the time, and they were playing a show in Munich at the Blitz Club. I took a train to see them and watch them play live for the first time. My dad is their drummer, and he invited me to join them and travel in the strangest of fashions. On tour, driving in a stinky van with some stinky guys all across Europe. So I did, and I joined the stew crew that is Cloakroom. Which led me to join them again on tour, this time in the US, and again a few months later, and just recently, once again. This time, I brought a field recorder on tour. So this is All Things Cloak. Crazy to try and start this story from the beginning, so we're gonna start it with its newest chapter, Cam. Unlike the others, he doesn't hail from the Midwest Plains, he's a Southern boy.
I was probably like 8 or 9, and we were living in like rural Alabama, and all me and my dad did, he was like a single dad at this point. And we just like played Guitar Hero every night ever because there was no one there to stop us.
Also, unlike the others, he's a former megachurch guitarist.
Yeah, so I like played in Christian bands as a teenager, and then one day I realized I didn't believe anything that I was doing. So I stopped doing that, and I was into like this. I started discovering like hardcore and metalcore. I don't know what the first like shoegaze band maybe Slowdive. Like they came back in 2017 and put out their self-titled record, and I heard that for the first time, and it like has all of these guitar tones that I was hearing in church, and like very clean and amazing tones, but done in a way that's like far more creative and genuine.
And after recording their newest album, Last Leg of the Human Table, Doyle reached out and he asked Cam to come on tour, play some guitar, do some vocals.
It was only a half an hour set for Cloakroom, so it was 5 or 4 songs for Cam to learn. And we became great friends through nothing. He used to take photos for us and was kind of our tour manager after some point. And I'd hear him play guitar, and I'd listen to his bands, and I was very impressed with what he was capable of doing. And I told him I needed him. I told him I needed him for that tour, and the rest is history. I think he's sticking around until we piss him off enough.
And I guess that brings us to Doyle.
Hello?
Lead
Yes.
guitar and a voice almost as good as his mom's.
Sun came up, it was another day.
Ruth Helmensky, her maiden name. She was in a small Catholic choir, St. Helens, and I was drugged there to do homework and, sit down and draw, and I was very young. And it was a small choir, but I don't know, I just think that, osmosis of being there and, like, listening to them sing harmonies, and my mom, it was like her band, she had a great time doing it. The organist was awesome. Peg was a great singer, too. Great portrait painter as well. And, I think that's how I started thinking about things musically. And I didn't know if, like, that was cool. I just thought that was music.
If anybody's ever had a doubt in their mind of where they're supposed to be, it's right here. This song's called Doubts. It's about doubts.
He grew up in Northwest Indiana where he met Bobby.
There were a lot of musicians our age in the region, but then there was a select group of musicians who were like serious enough that we were starting to like go play some shows. And Doyle's band was going to play shows in like Chicago and Michigan and things like that. So like we were among the small group that was like, okay, we're taking the next step beyond just being like a Northwest Indiana band. And we played a lot of those shows together, and we really rooted for each other.
It was kind of like a fun competition, a friendly competition, because they were from the town over. And his older bands, I think, toured first. Like, we were always playing local shows together, but his band was the first band that, was in my age bracket that went to Canada. I was like, wow, that's so cool that they got to travel all this way, like making original music as the excuse to go do that.
Doyle and I stayed tight, and we were always friendly. I always thought he was like immensely talented, like beyond what the rest of us were. He was such a gifted singer, and that was always the thing in my mind. Like that dude can actually sing. The rest of us are just like screwing off up here, but like he can actually sing and he can actually write lyrics, and he had a real ability that like the rest of us were like trying to attain, but he had like a natural ability.
And this is how Bobby and Doyle formed Cloakroom.
This band Codeine that we both really dug from the 90s was doing a reunion show in Chicago, and I bought us tickets. I'm like, let's go freaking see Codeine together. It'd be a great outing. Just like we haven't done something like that, We were starting to get meals together. Like we were starting to really like get chummy. We hadn't been like that in a while. We went and saw Codeine, and it shattered both of our realms. It was like, oh my God, like the dynamic, it was big, and then it was soft, and then it was slow, and it was like so emotional, and there was so much happening. So after we saw that, we went back to my parents' house where I was living at the time, and we went down in the basement, and like I had some riffs and he had some riffs, and I just remembered the note was like, let's play it like Codeine and slow. So like these riffs that were like probably going to be a little more like classic rock sounding all of a sudden became like very slow and like very drawn out and very bleak. And that was it. I mean, we wrote the first 5 songs together like in a couple sessions.
The original drummer, Brian, was working in a screen printing shop, and I met him. He was a little bit older than me, and we clicked listening to music, passed around the iPad. And in between jobs, we put on albums, and we realized that we liked a lot of the same music. Incredible musician, too. And he is from the town that Bobby lives in now, Chesterton, Indiana. So we had a nice little practice space to converge upon, and just made a lot of sense, and we wrote a lot of music there.
Bobby's on bass, and his love of music as well as his love of racing, that's thanks to his dad. But his first instrument, that's thanks to his mom.
When I was in 7th or 8th grade, I think I convinced my mom to take me to a pawn store that's in my hometown. I still go to it to this day. It's called Royal Music or Pawn. And I bought my first bass. And it was a total piece of shit. It was just like, it was the cheapest instrument they had. The strings were like 2 inches off the fretboard. It was unplayable, but it was mine. And we got a little practice amp, and then I was like off to the races. And I sucked for like a really long time. I was so bad. I was just like butchering. Like, I had no finesse. Like, I was just like fumbling around this huge ass instrument, And my hands are small for a bass player too, which made it even more difficult.
And when Bobby started getting into creating and performing music, he did that with Cloakroom's beloved sound engineer, Zach Montez.
Me and Zach were like writing music together, like we were forming punk bands together, and this went on for like a number of years. And then we formed a band that ended up getting like taken over by some older like musicians like that were like a grade or two ahead of us, and like all of a sudden we were like a real band. And I ended up like getting kicked out of the band because I was bad. Like I couldn't play to save my life, But that experience like of getting kicked out and like just feeling so devastated, I became totally obsessed with like learning to play bass inside and out. So I just sat in my basement for hours and hours and hours. That's all I did. I just played and I played and I played, and I learned like every Red Hot Chili Peppers song I could learn. I learned every Primus song. It's like learned the hardest stuff on bass that I could find. If there was like a crazy bass solo, I grabbed it and I learned it. And I became just obsessed with getting like as fluent in the instrument as I could.
Once Cloakroom had really established themselves as a band, their drummer also became a new dad, and being on the road became a bit difficult. So that's where my dad comes in, Tim.
So we would get a fill-in drummer every once in a while, and Sweet Cobra, your dad's band, and Jason and Grumpy's band, and Arlec's band, we kind of swapped out members, and it was a nice incestuous scene of musicians there that would help Cloakroom, and you're like, this is the Cloakroom collective kind of thing. And that Brian couldn't really play drums anymore and moved to Florida, and it was kind of going to be more of a recording project, but your dad rose to the occasion. Yeah. I mean, he is a legend too. Like if I thought Bobby was a great musician, like I never would think that I was going to play in a band this long with Remis. I thought that he was going to be humoring us, that he was going to play drums for a couple of tours, and we would take him to Europe and drink little coffees and have croissants and have tequila, and then he would go home and do his other things. But he stuck around, and the bond was formed between the three of us.
After a few fill-in shows and a European tour, he officially joined the Stu crew, that is Cloakroom.
If you're truly like a lover of music and like a seeker of music, you have these like, I don't know, these like weird built-in gauges for what's special musically. For me, so, it was always kind of like road trip and music, those like marriages, like when you're like driving with some of your closest friends or relatives, and then there's a song on, and that becomes like the soundtrack of that moment, and the like elation you feel from it is like, you get those, you only get a few of those moments maybe in a lifetime. You're like, you hear something that like strikes a chord in you so great, where you're just like, this is my shit. Like this was like designed for me. This music right now is like so what I'm into, and I didn't know it was there. I didn't know it existed. I'm just being like punched in the face by it right now. Cloakroom kind of had that for me, where I was like, oh, this is like a thing that I'm kind of familiar with. Like I can imagine this being a band, but it was like pretty striking to me, and pretty special. And like similar to like the first time I heard like a Fugazi song, or like the first time I heard like an Al Green song or something. It, like, it like had a lot of power behind it. I mean, it kind of hit me. It hit me in that way.
Got his start back at just 3 years old playing Suzuki violin, but quickly traded in that bow for some drumsticks, and he started his first band.
We had like little basement shows. Me and my neighbor Steve sang. His dad had like an old Vox Phantom electric guitar and like a little amp, and I had a little drum set up in the basement, and we would invite like kids from the neighborhood. I was just always excited about music, so any kid, any person I was friends with that had some access to some music that wasn't just like radio music, we'd always just like hunker down, sit around the stereo and listen to stuff.
And since then, he's never really stopped making music, buying old vans, and touring around in them.
It is like the weird thing where I think some people have an idea of being on tour and glamorizing it, and really it is just a lot of like one truck stop after another, one hotel after another, one green room after another. So like if you're like, to avoid the feeling of that being a grind, you have to like find a way to like, I don't know, just kind of observe whatever accidental culture you might be around. And, you know, like, it's just like people watching times 1,000. Holy shit, dude. Bobby, take a check out this guy right here. He's defying gravity. He's so drunk.
He's got a hard lean on, huh?
God, dude, that lean is insane.
What a lean, dude.
Dude, he's gonna fall asleep in that position. Good thing his knees are locked down. Oh God, there he goes.
Christ.
Ooh, he found the wall. Good thing he's wearing that cool helmet.
I mean, he's the captain, you know? When have you ever been the captain?
Cloakroom is a collective of weirdos, one that is a bit difficult to describe, but full of feeling, just like their sound.
When Disillusion Wave came out and I heard that for the first time, it was honestly like game changing to me. It felt like a whole new sound that I had never heard any band sound like. And I still don't really think there is a band that sounds like that record, or even the new one. Like, it's not a shoegaze band, it's not a rock band, it's not a country band, it's not stoner doom. Like, there is no label that I could like label Cloakroom as, which I think is awesome. Whenever people ask me what it sounds like, I don't even know where to begin.
It would fall into like a grungier alt rock realm. But I do think like the last record is kind of like undefinable genre wise.
The goal of Cloakroom is to be Cloakroom. In my mind, it's metamorphosized into something that I would hope would be beyond like a basic label. And in our last few records that have come out, the critics and the journalists that I've written with, they've parroted that back to me. And I would say that of all the things I've accomplished in Cloakroom, that is my most proud achievement, is the fact that like we have truly taken on an arena of one. We are just Cloakroom. And that if we could have any legacy, that's all I want. Is that, 10 years from now, there's a 16-year-old who has one of our records. He's like, oh, I'll play you this band. And his friend's like, what is it? He's like, it's Cloakroom. It's Cloakroom. I don't know. You just have to listen to it.
But their favorite song to play, that's an easy one, at least for the rhythm section.
Right now, I really love playing Lights.
I really love playing The Lights Are On.
That song's groove is it's just like the deepest, it's got the deepest groove. Yeah, it's a really, really fucking fun song to play. It's a very like clean drum song too. Like there's just like every beat and every like hit has its place, and if it lands right, it just like has a lot of power to it. So
Such a complex song. There's so much happening. There's so much you have to think about, which I love that. I love to be challenged. And when we were writing that song, I'm like, damn, this is like the hardest bass song I've ever written, But performing it live, there's so much I have to think about. There's so many things that are happening beyond the totally over-the-top bass parts that I'm playing. There's so many things that are happening dynamics-wise, things that I have to be like, aware of, and I have to know where I'm at every moment of that song.
like Cam and Doyle are doing this like thing that's kind of off kilter, and it's kind of like dragging, like it's just like dragging the chains of that song around like a circle around like the rhythm of it. It's pretty cool.
Rhythmically, there's so much happening there, and he and I, in order for Cloakroom to be an effective band, your dad and I have to be like completely locked in. He's the first drummer I've ever played with, and at this point I've played with like probably 15 drummers, but he's the first drummer that taught me like what it is to be a rhythm section. So like the more that your dad and I are locked in and we're like, oh yeah, we're on hit for hit. Like I can be blindfolded and I know where he is and I know when to hit, I know when to pause, I know when to do this. I'm like totally feeding off of his performance and vice versa. The more in sync we are, the better we are as a band, I think.
And their favorite show on this tour also remains undisputed.
I loved Sioux Falls.
I'd say the South Dakota show.
The Sioux Falls show is pretty special.
It just felt amazing. Like the four of us were so locked in, and that space was also awesome.
I think we all have an idea of like what we want this band to be. And that show, it just ended up being that. Like we drove into the middle of nowhere, somewhere no one goes, and we had a tremendous show full of people that were so incredibly gracious and so excited to see our band. And that was so rewarding.
Yeah, if we're locked in together, it's so much more rewarding. I think Cloakroom is like the most rewarding band I've ever played in, like after a show. Like if we played as good as we can play, I don't know what bands can sound or feel that good, at least to me.
When we pull off something that we, haven't done in a while, but it's like muscle memory, and we all do it so perfectly, or, when Remis does something that's just a little tastier, like a little off script. Sometimes I'll do that too. I think my favorite guitarist, I've never played the same song twice.
We're obviously on a stage and we're obviously in front of an audience, but like at this point where I'm at, I do feel like I am just up there with those guys. And we are like me, Cam, Doyle, and Tim are the only 4 people in the room. And every bit of energy that's happening, every bit of like the performance is all coming off of each other. That, Tim is the nucleus and we're all just like we're just this ball of energy that's like feeding off of him. And that focus and concentration of it being that way for me has taken it to where all the other elements, if it's a dead crowd, if it's a bad venue, if it's a bad sound guy, if it's, bad sound on stage, all of a sudden, all of those factors take a backseat to what is immediately happening between the 4 of us.
I might not contribute to the music-making part of this family, but as the official Cloakroom merch daughter, I've gotten to know these guys on the road, sleeping on hotel floors, in the Taco Bell drive-thru, in green rooms, the recording studio, on stage, backstage, and there wouldn't be a stew crew I'd rather be a part of.